Hello everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome back to part 2 of this week's Mondays with Mrhappy, celebrating 1 year. I'm trying to answer every single question, and that video was going to be well over an hour, so I decided to split it in two so people could approach it one by one. On top of that, we have a third video, a part 3 video coming out, which is the video I mentioned at the beginning of video number 1. If you wonder why I keep looking over here, it's because I'm making sure. My beard is just ridiculous, and I can't stop. This thing's got to go. Not go entirely, just it needs to be taken care of. It's scary to look at, to be honest. Anyway, now that I'm done looking at myself over on this monitor, let's get right back into the questions that we hadn't gotten to answer in the last video. So next question was, hello Mrhappy, happy Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays anniversary. Damn, that's a lot of happies. First time here, so enjoy whatever bonus you still need. If you're weekly capped, then accept an early SO. I need poetics right now because I'm trying to level desynthesis, and poetics gear is pretty nice for that. So, question number 1. What do you think the chances are of us ever seeing Machinist get dual pistols? They're not going to change the type of weapons Machinist has. If they're ever going to do dual pistols, it'll be with another job. My beard is so long, it's like getting into my mouth, and I don't like it. So I don't see that ever happening. They're not going to change the main type of weapon that they use. I enjoy your State of the Realm shows. However, I'm curious where you met Sly and how he came to be a co-host for the show, since you guys are on different servers and different raid groups. Seems like a rather random matchup. So met Sly at the North American Fan Festival last October. We beat a few of the fights together. We did a few of the fights together as well, and I don't know, we just maintained contact after that. Met through a few other people. My girlfriend is the one who met most people and ended up introducing them to me. And it was we tried out a few people who are on the dream team for the position of co-host. And Sly. I mean, everyone did good, but Sly had this like contrast. Like, he just wasn't willing to agree with me. And he had his own thoughts, and he was funny, and it all came together. And he's not only that, but he's also come into his own. He's not nervous like he was the first few times. He's gotten to play the game a lot more since then. He's gotten into raiding a lot more since then. And he just always has something to contribute, something to say, and always some thought that he can share with everyone, that it seems like everyone's finally letting him come into his own. And it's been great to watch him grow, especially after he hosted the show a couple of weeks, just because I was out doing Alexander. So, that's how the Sly story began, and it's been going good ever since. It's been really good having him on State of the Realm. Next question. Hello, Senor Happy. Been watching your videos for a long time. I've never really had a question to ask or an opinion I just wanted to push. No bonus for you, though, because I've been farming Mrhappy Mondays every week for a year now while at work. Hey, I'm glad you listen to them at work, man. But something has been bothering me lately. Do you think we will ever reset cooldowns upon wiping? Please, for the love of God, yes. Please, for the love of God, yes. I can't stand waiting for cooldowns. It's so annoying. I can understand not resetting them in like a dungeon, but for the love of God, if you're going to respawn us with all of our HP and MP, just give us the cooldown. I want it. Thank you for your question. Next question. Hey, happy anniversary bonus. That's a good bonus. I don't think anyone else gave me an anniversary bonus, just that first time bonus that we're always getting. I've been following your stuff for quite some time now, but first time asking a question on Dream Network, so double bonus. Anyway, I might be looking into things too much here, but Yoshi P has a trend of thinking himself clever. We were first introduced to some of the new abilities. The statement he made regarding Astrologian had me thinking, you'll need to master one stance before you try to learn the other. Here's my question. What if Astrologian job fix we've been looking at has been on our face? Do you think a future patch will change so you can switch from nocturnal to diurnal while in combat? Looking at how spells work under both sects, it seems very logical choice and would fix a lot of things. Okay, so I don't know, like, yeah, would that be good? Yes, absolutely. It'd be great to be able to throw a regen up on people after big raid damage and then throw a weaker shield up. It also sort of makes up for the fact that Nocturnal Sect sucks on its own. And one way to make it so that that's not the case is to just make Nocturnal Sect and Diurnal Sect switchable in combat. It then might give them a little bit too much strength, but I think it's a strength that they need to be on par with the other two. Because the big thing that Astrologians lack, effective healing cooldowns. Okay, light speed, great. With the changes, less MP cost, really fast healing, can heal while moving, great. Good, great, grand, wonderful. Sinistry, great. It's an ability that I have been waiting for a long time in Final Fantasy XIV, where you heal one target and the other target gets healed for 50% of that. It's been a long time coming. Then what else do they have? Celestial Opposition sucks. I mean, Collective Unconsciousness sucks. That needs a buff. Celestial Opposition. Actually, no, Celestial Opposition sucks too. It's an AoE stun on what? Like a 2.5 minute cooldown, and it extends everyone's buffs by 5 seconds? Ooh. It's like that could be one thing. There's a lot of things they could do to make Astrologian better. One I really want to see, make it so that when people walk into collective unconsciousness, it gives them a buff that will last X amount of time after they leave the bubble. So it makes it so that, like, for the Sacred Soil version, you could literally just collective unconsciousness and either stay that way to block the damage and keep refreshing the buff. Like, it just stays at, like, 12 seconds or something, or 10 seconds while everyone's standing in it, and then it ticks down after they leave. Or you could just pop it, give everyone the shield, and then get out of there and start casting spells. It would make it a much more versatile spell. And then think about it for the regen. If people stand in it, they get this regen. It stays on them when they leave. And on top of that, if they keep standing in the bubble, the regen just keeps staying at max duration until they leave. Like, that's a little change that could just make a huge difference. Being able to change stances would also, too, because it would make up for the fact that Nocturnal sucks, and you would use it in very few situations. So, yeah, that could be one thing they do. Hopefully, they do, I don't know, anything? Just anything at all, please. Okay, so we're on to the last page of questions. We have quite a few left, so let's get right to it. All right, next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, long-time asker here. I know you should be giving others a chance, but hey, it's an anniversary, and I need some hashtag real talk advice right now. Oh, man. My static got server 5th and 4th on Alexander 1 and 2 Savage. However, because one person snapped and more drama happened, the team broke up. All the more Savage Progress teams are occupied this late into the patch. So now I have a new team that's working on clearing Alexander 1 Savage solely, but that's, excuse me, not quite my problem. I need a method on routine so I can stay fit as a Dragoon melee DPS without having immediate opportunities, pug or sub in Savage, so what should I do? You mean so you don't, you know, get rusty? Just keep playing. That's all there really is to it. You just need to keep playing, man. There's not much more to it than to do it. That's it, man. I don't know, stay fit. I'm assuming that's what you mean by stay fit, is just, you just don't want to, like, be out of practice for the job. And you know what? No matter how in practice you are, all it comes down to on those jobs is, for this fight, when do I use certain abilities? When's the optimal time to use each ability? And then you learn that fight, and you move on to the next fight, and you learn it for that fight, too. I think you'll be fine regardless of this. I'm sorry to hear that your static broke up. That's happened in A3 Savage to a lot of people, because A3 Savage is fucking nightmare. So it's been happening to a lot of people. I feel for you on that. But just do the fights, man. Just keep playing those jobs, and you'll be fine. Next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, first time, so SO bonus. I have 2 questions, but if you're only going to be answering 1 question this week, preferably do the first one. With Dark Knights being one of the new must-haves in endgame activity, and them not being squishy if played properly, would it be better to put points in the strength? You get to 16, 17k HP, and then you go all strength. I feel it's fair enough for me to answer the second question, because I've kind of answered that. I answered that in the part 1, so this is part 2, so if you didn't watch part 1 and now you hear it in part 2, then 16, 17k HP, and then go full strength. Next question. My second question is something I came across becoming a semi-new player. Came back for Heaven's Ward after I tried out 14 back in 1.0. Do you think that they should look into giving more EXP for quest rewards post-Ultima quest? I semi-rushed by doing all the main story content from Ultima until the first mission. Heaven's Ward probably only gained 1 level. What do you think? It's not supposed to level you all that much, because they don't want you to be so over-leveled for the Heaven's Ward areas that you're like, oh, well, why the fuck am I even doing these quests? They still want you to be in a valid range for them at first, so I think it's fine. It's probably not as rewarding as it could be, but the fact that they gear you up through the main story also is probably more than adequate, considering that it could have just made you go and do dungeons and farm tomestones and shit at 50 before you gear up for the expansion. Thank God they didn't make us do that instead. So I think it's fine the way it is. Next question. Mr. Happy, first time asking a question, so enjoy the sweet SO bonus you don't actually get. Why you gotta slap me with reality right there? I know you don't know much about the music, as I know you don't listen to the in-game sounds, but I noticed the Magitech Mounts plays the Terra theme. Yes. Have you noticed any other sweet nods to the best Final Fantasy in the game? Keep in mind they just cleared 2.0 for the first time Tuesday, but I don't care about spoilers. Gilgamesh and Ultros. Major nods. The Crystal Tower. Major nods to Final Fantasy 3 music. There's a lot of remix. Good King Moggle is a nod to Mog's theme in Final Fantasy 6. There's a lot of them out there. There are some nods to like Final Fantasy 2. There's some nods to Final Fantasy. I think the B rank hunt music is a nod to Final Fantasy II's battle theme. I think it is. There's a lot of them out there. If they could do any nod to another Final Fantasy, they pretty much are doing it. So just keep your ears out, and you'll hear plenty of them, especially if you go through the Hildebrand quest line. Next question. Sup, bruh? Oh goodness, I'm afraid to read this entire question. I have a question regarding the difficulty of Savage. I cleared A1 Savage in the first week, then killed A2 Savage in the second week, and I'm currently calling A3 Savage McDonald's because I'm loving it. I should have known this was going to come from you. But since this is the first MMO I'm actually rating and not focused purely on PvP, I was wondering about something. I remember you saying you have rated in a lot of other MMOs, right? I wouldn't say. I guess 11 and WoW are like the only ones I've majorly rated in. Rated in RO2, as much as that counts for nothing. I was wondering how the current Savage difficulty and the T5, T9 Tier 3 difficulty back in the day compared versus other MMOs like WoW. I heard WoW has gone full casual mode. The Mythic raids are still not full casual. But I hear stories of WoW also has hardcore difficulties. Could you explain how all these raid difficulties from these games compare versus each other? Which one is the hardest you've encountered so far? Okay, so first of all, for Final Fantasy XI, that's by far the easiest one. Because Final Fantasy XI's raids were not difficult, they were time consuming. And for some people, keep staying, I guess, paying attention for a long period of time can very easily be challenging. So, if anything, as a teenager, that made it challenging for me is the fact that I'm like, I gotta pay attention, man. This fight's gonna be 30 minutes. I'm gonna be here for 30 minutes. We're not fucking up for 30 minutes. This stun, I'm gonna sit here with my hand over the stun button and do nothing else for the next 30 minutes. So Final Fantasy XI, easiest raids, by far. World of Warcraft had some really good raid design back when I played it. I played it during Burning Crusade, the beginning of Wrath, and the end of Wrath. And then I did heroic progression in when it first launched in Cataclysm. So while the World First race was still going on, I was progressing through those same raids, and I beat most of them. There's a handful, like I didn't beat the Elemental Council. I didn't beat Sinestra. I beat everything in Blackwing Descent except for the Omnitron defense system and I think Nefarian. So I think it was 13 bosses. I think I had 7 or 8 of them done or something like that before I quit because it was just boring. But the raid difficulty was always pretty solid when playing on the highest difficulty. Especially I hear Firelands was phenomenal. Well, I hear that everything other than Ragnaros sucked, but Ragnaros himself was really good. I don't know, because I've only played so few of them. I didn't play Vanilla. I didn't play most of BC. I didn't do Ulduar, which is a great raid to compare in terms of difficulty. It's also hard to tell because World of Warcraft has a lot of filler bosses that are just fucking pointless and they're so easy, even on the hardest difficulty. Like, you don't even know why they included them in the fucking game. They're that easy. It's tough. Coil is okay, so Coil 1 through 5 was really easy. T5, I know that's debatable because of the whole Twisters debacle, but as soon as Twisters were nerfed, the fight was a complete joke. Like, if the game had less latency at that time, and Twisters weren't so overtuned at the same time, they probably could have just fixed the latency and Twisters would have been fine. But they decided to go for the twofer and reduce the Twister difficulty and reduce the latency at the same time, which was probably overkill. Yeah, because after that it was a joke. Like, dive bombs weren't hard, even when you did our shitty strategy where we ran back and forth as opposed to the pit because we didn't want to just copy BG. And then turns 6 through 9 were really, really well designed, minus a few things in 6 and 9 that were a little bit disjointed. Turn 10 through 13 were more interesting encounters, but not necessarily more difficult. 12 and 13 were checks in different ways. Like, 13 was mostly are your healers able to mitigate damage efficiently kind of check, on top of beating this insane DPS check at the same time. So, I'd say that the Savage raids we have here are very equivalent to the Mythic raids, to the harder Mythic raid bosses in World of Warcraft, whereas our non-Savage Coil raids, not Alexander, because Alexander Normal's a fucking joke, our non-Savage Coils pre-nerf were equivalent to the other half of the Mythic bosses, the easier ones. So I'd say they're about on par. I think that some of WoW's bosses are innately more difficult because right now, the raid size is locked into 20 people. And the way I feel about having 20-man raids, by the way, that progression group I was in was a 25-man progression raiding group back in Heroic Cataclysm. I feel that more often than not, it's not the fight's difficulty that holds you back. It's people fucking up. Having 20 different people that can fuck up instead of 8, which innately makes it more difficult than it actually is, just because you're adding in another chance at human error just with all these extra people. If we're talking about tuning it tightly, the 8-man raids have probably gotten better, but if we're talking about difficulty in terms of human error, then World of Warcraft probably has it on that front. I feel like that's an adequate answer. They're about the same, but they're hard for different reasons than each other. Also, Savage A4 is a fucking nightmare in every way, shape, and form. Alexander Savage 3 also was a nightmare in almost every form. Now it's not so bad with the weapons, but pre-weapons, oh my goodness. Good fight, though. I had a lot of fun with A3 Savage progression. Next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, long-time viewer, first-time poster. SO bonus. I mean, Paladin, I have been forever, and I consider myself a good hardcore player, but I was wondering what it would be worth to level Dark Knight and play a Dark Knight through Alex Savage. At this point with weapons, Paladin's fine. Dark Knight's more DPS, so if you're playing with a group of people that doesn't exactly have like that high tier DPS, the Dark Knight might be able to make up for the difference. But I mean, a good Paladin still does good damage. It's just not as good as the Dark Knight or the Warrior. But it wouldn't be a bad idea to level the Dark Knight, see how you feel about it, and if you have to, change your main. I mean, it probably sucks as you probably spent SOs already, but if you didn't spend SOs on the weapon, then you might be okay. I'd say level your Dark Knight, see how you like it, and then see where you're going to go from there. At least get it to 60 first, and see if you even like it before you force yourself to play it. Next question. What's happening, Haps? Congrats on a full year of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hoping for 3 weeks of getting my questions answered back. Don't break my combo. Don't worry, because I decided to answer every question, or at least one question from every person this week. This week, I feel like asking some questions that I've had and keep wondering about every time I watch your videos. These questions are hopefully short enough that you can answer more than one. These are mostly personal questions and not really game related. Interesting. Then they might be, because in the third part video, I'm going to be doing like a personal question kind of thing. That's what that one final question is, the one I got the YouTube video about. So let me see how it is. So what brand of gaming glasses do you wear? Gunners. Very simple. Another alternative to these, because I bought these because I worked in New York City, and I looked at a lot of different computers every day. F.Lux. You can download it on your computer. That can also give you similar effects to the Gunners. Next question. What level graphics quality do you play? Maximum. Maximum. If you're wondering about my computer specs, they're listed under my Twitch channel. If you go to my Twitch profile in the description of the video, then you can find it under the channel itself. There should be a description. Excuse me. On average, how much of the game do you play per day? About 5 hours. Depends on if I'm raiding. If I'm raiding, about 8 hours. If I'm not raiding, at least 5 hours for my stream schedule. Follow up for last week's question. Why don't you play with sound on? It's just distracting. When I'm doing an encounter, I don't want to be distracted by the music. I don't want to be like, yeah, the music. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just like, the fight is what I want to pay attention to, not the music. 5, actually, 14 related question. As my main is Warrior, I would like to know how your group dealt with Faust's minions. Dark Knight tanks Faust, Warrior tanks minions, we DPS. We didn't have to do anything special. That's all we did. But that's, I mean, I know that doesn't work for every group. A lot of groups are doing the solo tank until almost enrage, and then having the off tank switch their tank stance and provoke, so that way the main tank doesn't die, while the main tank retains aggro on all the adds. But we just did standard, you know, one tank picks up Faust, the other picks up the adds, make sure they don't cleave the raid, and then just DPS is the boss. That's all we did. Nothing really too special. And I believe they wear 3 slaying, 2 fending, but I think the slaying might be crafted, I-150 crafted with melds in them. I don't know for certain off the top of my head, though. And that's how it's been. And those were quick questions. Thank you. Those were good. Those are nice quick questions. We only have a handful left, thankfully. All right, so next question. Hello, Mr. Happy, first-time poster, but long-time viewer, even back during beta. So here's a mythology bonus. Kidding, it's actually SO bonus. There are actually 2 questions, but please answer the first one if you can only answer one. The reason why I registered here was to ask a question about Paladin. I have 3 jobs, Paladin, White Mage, Machinist, and out of all of them, Paladin is my main, and I even spent my SOs on the sword and the shield. However, the past 3 statics looking for a tank have rejected me because they don't want Paladin. It is the lowest DPS out of all the tanks, and every foreign savage is a massive DPS race. Even though BG completed a 1-3 savage with a Paladin Warrior composition, Warrior Dark is a dominating preference. I feel even if I have penta melded gear, just the fact that I'm Paladin and only a Paladin is not enough these days. Okay, so that's people being stupid. That's people looking at other people's success and being like, well, we'll just mimic that. We won't think for ourselves. We won't look at our composition and where our comfort zone is. We're just going to follow what everyone else is doing. Oh, this group did it with Paladin? Great. It's still not as good. I don't give a shit. And that's always going to happen with endgame raids because people want to be as efficient as possible. Would I honestly take a Paladin? Probably not. But and for the same reason, because I want the high DPS output of Dark Knight. But now that everyone has the weapons, if you have a Paladin, it shouldn't be an issue getting it done. Hell, even without the weapons, it wasn't necessarily an issue. You just needed to know how to push DPS in other places. So I don't think Paladin necessarily needs a buff. They just fill a different void. It may be a problem in the fact that people think that these fights are supposed to be beaten in this gear easily. They are not. These fights are meant to be challenging, and they are also meant to be done with any composition. Granted, the gear is actually available and the skill is actually available. So I don't want to tell you to just... I mean, should you have a Dark Knight just in case? Sure. Because guess what? If they don't have a monk, the Dark Knight becomes a near necessity just for the sake of a Delirium Blade. That's the other issue, is that Paladin doesn't have Delirium Blade. Not even just that they don't have the DPS, just they don't have Delirium Blade. Warrior is also really friggin' overpowered. Don't know why I said friggin' instead of fucking, but whatever. Just Paladins are so safe. They're good. They have their uses. They have their utilities. Your group has to learn to use them to increase your raid DPS, like using Divine Veil instead of stopping to cast Succor, so that way your Scholar doesn't have to waste a GCD not being in Cleric stance. Like, even just down to little things like that is where Paladin can help other people squeeze out more DPS. It's just a matter of knowing how to use Paladin, and people, you know, no one's told them how to do it yet, so they're not doing it. That's pretty much how it works. A situation like this happened in 11. You don't need to tell me that, trust me, I know. In 11, people are like, you could play any job. Yeah, and also if you wanted to raid, you could only play like these 7 jobs. So since you were a legacy character and I've never experienced 1.2x, was this situation also present between Warrior and Paladin? Not as much. It could be, though. At times it was, at times it wasn't. It was more along the lines of, did you want to bring a monk for 100 fists, or did you want to bring a dragoon? It really didn't matter back in 1.0. You just did whatever. You could do whatever because the game was so slow that it was pretty easy in order to overcome it. I'd say try leveling your other tanks back to 14, just in case. And as for, it's always going to be whatever's most efficient, people will turn to. If they know it's most efficient, people will almost always turn to it. That's pretty much the bottom line. Alright, next question. Question for week 52. As a fellow ninja, I have a question on stats. In your opinion, which stat should I focus on? Looking between esoterics and savage, I can't tell which one is best in slot. First of all, it's going to be a mix of both. I'm sure that's what you meant, like that you don't know how to mix and match them. It seems crit number 1, pretty much number 1 for almost everyone in the game at this point. Minus, I think, a few people. Crit number 1. I guess I don't know where skill speed and determination stand right now, though. Determination doesn't affect our auto attacks anymore, which is pretty big. It still affects all of our other skills, though. And skill speed is still an issue with running out of TP, but it does affect our dot damage, and it does let us get through our rotation a little bit more smoothly. I'm just gonna... I don't know for certain about between skill speed and determination, so I can't tell you exactly, but crit after meeting accuracy requirements will be where you look to get most of your stats, is as much crit as possible. It synergizes with everything except duality so well. So well. So, crit. Next question. Sup, Happy? What's up? With the incredibly strict DPS checks, especially in A3 and A4, do you think that perhaps they should have implemented 3 difficulty levels? This has been something I was probably going to talk about in another video that I guess I'll briefly talk about here. I think that they needed a 3rd difficulty just for the sake of... Okay, so here's the problem. When you start making all these difficulties to fit for everyone, you run into the issue of, there's only so many times I want to do this fight on a different difficulty. Like, is it cool that it's harder on this hardest difficulty? Sure. Is it cool that there's a difficulty for people that don't necessarily care about the hardest difficulty, but they still want to challenge? Great. The problem is I can only look at this boss so many times, especially when you have to make gear rewards for every single one of them. It then makes the easiest one give gear that'll help you with the hard one, and then the hard one give gear that'll help you with the hardest one, and you end up just doing everything because you're trying to get all the gear for the week, and then you're just tired of those bosses. So, they could have just made story mode harder. I'd rather see that. It makes the story a little bit more epic, too. When you don't just breeze through all the bosses that are part of the story. At least in my opinion, that's how I feel. I don't think they needed to be as hard as Coil, but Coil with Echo, which is what they initially promised, would have been a good place, I feel, to have normal mode. Alright. Anyway, as a group that took a reasonable amount of time to clear the previous Coils, I have a feeling we'll be banging our heads on A3 Savage for months. Yeah, it's rough. There's too much of a difficulty gap between Savage and the rest of the expansion. That's what they wanted. I mean, people said they wanted as hard of a fight as they can make, and Savage 3 and 4 sure as hell accomplished that. It's just something in between. It's got its own pros and cons. I really like they could have just made normal mode harder, make it more satisfying, make it actual progression, and then make Savage mode a step up from that for the hardest of hardcore. Next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, and happy 1-year anniversary. Thank you. First time question, so here's some bonus RNG on Savage drops. This doesn't work. I ain't getting shit. I recently came back to the game after 4 months, and I'm doing my best to become as raid ready as soon as possible. I'm planning on maining a white mage, but I find myself hesitating to start DPSing in cases when something goes wrong. So in 4-man dungeons, things go wrong way more often than they do in organized raiding, because in organized raiding, everyone needs to have their own responsibilities, and guess what? Most people's responsibilities is to dodge shit. Or ultimately, you look at the fight, you know this same damage comes out at this same time in this same amount, and you can calculate your heals for the entire fight. It's when someone fucks up and you need to throw an extra heal out at them that it throws everything off. And that happens a lot in 4-man dungeons. So don't feel too bad when your tank is getting hit by cleaves, or your DPS are standing in AoEs or moving out and trying to move out at the last second and failing. Because that's, you just got to make up for that with more healing and just as little healing as possible. Any tips on reserving mana for clutch time healing? It just all comes down to knowing the fight. That's it. It's just, all of your question is just, you got to know the fight. Once you know the fight, there should be calculated times where you know I can do this many spells before I have to heal again. And then there's gonna be 4-man dungeons where people get hit by everything and you can't DPS at all. So you're just gonna have to strike a balance between the two, and hopefully you're able to do that. And here we go, last question. Congrats, Haps, on the 1-year big number 52. Hope you are having a great day and all the drops be what you need. Everyone keeps wishing me luck, and I'm never going to get my drops. I'm never going to get them. So I've leveled Machinist to 60, and I think it's cool. But a pet job guy and summoner has been my thing. That being said, I don't think I'm going to be able to do Alex Savage due to the time I can play. What's the best gear to get before AF2? I know, but I should be. No, don't even bother with the crafted gear. It's way too expensive, especially if you're not doing Savage. So happy to learn you like Pup in 11. So did I. Beast was my main for solo, but I did Summoner and PTs and really got Machinist. For the Automaton in 11, maybe they left this open for Pup later on. You can get whatever the hell you want pre-AF2. If you're not going to do Savage, dude, get all your law gear, get whatever Alexander normal gear you can get, and then just buy whatever you want with Essos. You're not doing Savage ever. Your gear choices are completely irrelevant for progression, because you're getting whatever you want. You're literally just like, I want this. I don't have to worry about gearing up for Savage or having the best gear for Ravon. You do whatever you want. You're good. That's all you need to know. Anyway, now I'm done with those awkward moments. Thank you everyone for asking your questions for this week's Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hopefully you enjoyed the fact that this was a 2-parter and that you have a lot to listen to. Yeah, great English, Happy. A lot to listen to on this Monday. We still have one more Monday video coming, so hopefully you enjoy that one as well. Thank you everyone for your questions, and be sure to ask your questions for next week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy, when we go back to the normal, not 3 videos for 1 week kind of deal. Anyway, thank you for watching. I will see you all next week, or I guess again in 5 minutes for the part 3 video. I'll see you in 5 minutes. Bye-bye.